strategy,
design,
marketing,
UX,
digital.
development.
This is Agencies That Build. This show is dedicated to leaders and teams that design and deploy in the digital world. My name is Jessie, and I'm a marketer and an agency owner.
And I'm Varun. I'm not a marketer, but a coder and an agency partner.
This show is sponsored by Together We Ship.
On a mission to help agencies grow.
So rock on. Hi, everybody. Varun, welcome, my friend. How are you today?
I'm doing awesome. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy that today is Thursday, but depends on what day you watch this episode. Could be any day for you, but I am super excited to talk to today's guest. I know you are too. He's an entrepreneur. He's a writer. He's a designer, a project manager, a copywriter, a salesman, among a few other things, I'm sure, that we're going to talk about here in a minute. He's the co-founder and CEO of Barrel, Peter Kang. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Thank you, Jessie. Thank you, Varun. Great to be here.
So we'll start off our conversation with our usual question, which is, what myth do you want to smash, bust? What misconception, bogus strategy do you want to eradicate or set the record straight on? What do you got? What do you want to clear up?
Yeah, clear up. I mean, there's many things, but the thing that came to mind here is actually something that's been driving me nuts for the last 15 years. It's so our company name is Barrel, but you won't believe how many times we get referred to as Barrel NY, because obviously that's the URL. I've been trying my hardest to get barrel.com over the years. I always reach out to the park domain owner asking, hey, can I buy this for a few $100? Can I buy it for a few $1,000? And every year it's gone up a little bit, and every year the answer is the same. We're not interested in selling. So I don't think I'll ever get to barrel.com, but the name of the company is Barrel, not Barrel NY. I hope we can clear that up for folks out there.
That's a good one. Now, I don't think I ever looked up barrel.com to see who currently owns it. It doesn't look like they're using it. It looks like it's a placeholder. That's so frustrating.
I know.
Have you ever successfully, purchased a URL from somebody else in the past for anything, for any of your initiatives?
Definitely. Nothing kind of crazy, but for certain clients, we've helped broker, just going through the GoDaddy's brokering services to buy domains for, a few $1,000 or things like that.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that nobody talks about, but everyone has to deal with at some point. And I'm completely off topic here, but because you brought it up, it's one of those stressful things, because it's such an emotional purchase to go in and say, I want that name. I want that to be my identity. And when you don't get it, it's like, crap, like, what's my plan B? What do I do now? Like, how do I rethink this? It's so disappointing sometimes, and it can be stressful. Even rethink your business name.
Why is barrel.com so important to you? I mean, I can relate to that just because we started this brand called Together. We did not get the domain together.com. We have togetherweship.com, but we call ourselves as Together. I wonder, the domain for you, barrel.com, is that very emotional decisions that you need to take?
Maybe I wouldn't say it's like super emotional or anything. It's more like I think having Barrel NY be the domain name just confuses what people typically just look at the URL and that's the name of your company. I don't know if anyone ever called you guys Together We Ship as a company, but for some reason the NY just kind of has become like just a thing that has been tough to shed. So I think just in response to that. That's why I'd love to, one day still get barrel.com.
It's a good URL too. I feel like as more people launch websites, I hope that, the two, like, you can name your company whatever you want as long as it's available, whatever the government says and how you register your name and all that fun stuff. But, the URL, it's a funny little challenge. It's like there's been a couple companies I've been involved in recently that we debated going, okay, what are we going to call this thing? Oh, is the URL available? And it wasn't, or a version of it wasn't, but you can get the .co or the whatever, .net or what, other combinations. And but it's like, there's something about the .com. You just want that little bugger. So
Yeah,
I think
still
it's
standard.
creative agencies or the marketing agencies that make a big deal of it. I think. I mean, for me, it never cared about it. But anyways, let's get off this topic.
Okay,
Let's not
enough
talk about
about
domains anymore.
All right, so let's talk about Peter. I think normally we start off talking about your agency and what you do, but actually I want to start off by talking a little bit about hearing from you a little bit about your history and how you got into this, how you got into Running Barrel. Your path, like many of ours, is not a straight line. And as a prolific writer on your blog too, it's been interesting prior to our conversation, just reading about some of your insights there. But I'd love to kind of have you walk us through, maybe in a quick rundown, tell us how you got here. How did you end up starting Barrel? What's your track record, your bio, I guess is the right word, not track record.
Yeah, it started, I'd say, it's a lot of it started very early. So, my just growing up, in elementary school, like my father had bought me a computer and, kind of got me exposed to, just how to use a computer really early on. And, part of the thing that I picked up on was like desktop publishing. So back in the day, pre-internet, and, even, websites or anything like that. I was really into making newsletters, for my friends at school. So I would design. So, and I used to run, my first kind of attempt was in like sports. I was and still am a big sports fan. And I used to, just like I would read articles in the New York Times, watch ESPN, and I would just write my own articles about games and things that happened to my favorite teams. And, usually they were like the Knicks or, I think the Florida State Seminoles were also my favorite college football team. So I just write articles and then just put it together in a little thing. And, my dad, he had like a photocopier at home, and we had, computer with printer. So I had the tools to make these things. I'd cut out pictures from New York Times and put it in my magazine, make photocopies of it, bring it to my friends at school and just like give them out. And, that was kind of the start of like, hey, with the computer, I can do a lot of cool things. And, that kind of kickstarted just just a lot of these adventures. And, when I discovered kind of internet, starting with like online bulletin board services early on, and then kind of moving on to AOL and all those things, like I just was always fascinated at like what you could do in a lot of these places. And, once I learned how to make a website on a web browser, that really, kind of unlocked a lot of creativity. I ran a website for my friends. At first it was like kind of funny things like, oh, nicknames for each other. I would just like make a little web page, and kids would just go on it and just have a good laugh. And then over time, it like evolved to other things. Like I'd publish like little study guides for tests, and then put it up on my website and get a lot of traffic. And back in the days, you could see the counter kind of racking up and stuff on the site. So that was really cool. And then I started running a teen magazine in high school as well, where like we'd publish about half a dozen articles and like on different topics that are important to teens, and then have themes every month, and ran that for like 2 years, a good 2 years. And so that got me exposed to a lot of things, like how to it was writing, it was editing, it was just kind of coming up with brainstorming different ideas, a graphic design, because I had to illustrate the cover art, as well as the website. I had to learn HTML, I had to like learn how to like deploy the site and all those things. So just all that experience drove kind of my interest in this area. And so, just going into college, a lot of the skills I had gained, throughout my early years, it really kind of coalesced into where, I became president of a cultural group on campus called the Korean Students Association. And, at that time, I was a junior, and then there was like a freshman that had joined the club as well, and that his name was Sewuk, and that ended up becoming my co-founder in Barrel. But the two of us teamed up, and it was really cool because like I had kind of like made a mark with this club. I mean, it's just a club on campus, but like I made a website that was like really fantastic. Someone was like, "Oh, it looks like a corporate like website with all this cool content and stuff, whatever." Um, but like, and so that attracted a lot of like folks to join and everything. And then so this guy Sayuk joins, and I was like, and I learned he knows how to make websites too. And I'm like, hey, you and I are going to do some cool things together in this club. And we ended up like really using the club as a vehicle to express so many of our creative kind of ideas, which we did. Like there were these tentpole events throughout the year. Like kind of like autumn festival, kind of like collaborations with other culture groups, and we used our understanding of design, kind of branding, all the web stuff to like market the hell out of these events. And then not only that, we kind of used some club funds to like rent expensive camera equipment at the time, like DSLRs, which were like rare back then, take amazing photos, use that, and then kept document everything. So by the end of the our first year of collaboration, we had amassed like a portfolio of like, hey, all these amazing events that we did, all this impact that we had on the campus. And we nominated and won like a very prestigious award that's usually goes to like the government councils, the student government councils, because they have like millions of dollars in budget. We're talking about tens of thousands, this dinky, kind of cultural club, outsized impact because we knew how to market ourselves. We knew how to leverage technology. We knew how to get the word out. And that was the start of a beautiful relationship that still continues to today, where the two of us were like, even after the whole culture club stuff, was over, we're like, hey, let's continue working together on projects. And so we would collaborate on freelance website projects. And during this time, I ended up getting an internship at the NFL, and and that's also a story that was kind of fortuitous in many ways, because that summer I had so desperately wanted to go into advertising. I was like, oh, that is my destiny. I need to go into advertising, try to get internships. I applied to dozens of internships, rejected from all of them. And last chance was like, hey, there's this weird HR internship at the NFL. I'm like, HR, I don't want to do HR. But then the description was like, hey, they're doing something web related, web project related. And so I was like, oh, okay, I have some qualifications to do that. I applied, I got in. And what that project ended up being was they were looking for, and which was, I was kind of baffled later on, because I was like, hey, they're looking for an intern to kind of design and run their kind of like conceptualize their internal intranet for a company of 300 plus people at the corporate offices. I was like, what? It's kind of like, but then I was like, oh, I'm up for the challenge, and like I just like really owned it, and I was like, like they were thinking that I would just kind of like do some research and maybe kind of like come up with some best practices. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna design this, mock it up, and then circulate it. And what happened was like the designs made their way to folks in the executive leadership, and that brought heat on the IT team to then be like, hey, you got to work with this intern to get this to look like whatever he's just mocked up. And so that I really became an owner of that like intranet project. I mean, mind you, I was getting paid like $12 an hour, but as an intern, but still, like I was like, this is an opportunity of a lifetime, and it was awesome. Like by the end of the end of my internship, like we launched this thing, got a personal thank you card from the commissioner at the time, Paul Tagliabue, and still have it. It was like, he's just like, hey, I heard that you had a big hand in kind of the success of our intranet. Just really want to thank you. And just that just gave me more confidence. I was like, yeah, I could do this at a at a company like this. I feel like there's a future here. So anyway, I actually ended up passing my internship, and this is crazy because like usually it has to go through like a whole rigorous hiring process, but then I had kind of won so much credibility in that role. I was able to pass that internship to Seiwook because he's younger. So I was like, hey, why don't you just take over the reins here? You can take over. And so he ended up holding on to that internship for the duration of his time at school. So anyway, fast forward, a couple of years, I had to graduate. And the thing was like, Seiwook and I always wanted to do things together. And I was like, hey, I'm graduating first, a couple years older, gonna go work first, get a job first. And attending Columbia University at the time, there's really, two things that you really apply to: investment banking or consulting. I think this is like, you know, unless you go to graduate school, those are kind of the paths. So yeah, I decided to go the investment banking route. Had never taken a class in economics or anything, but just, greased some connections, relationships I had, and just got in front of the right people, and was able to land a job at Lehman Brothers, which at the time was a prestigious investment bank, no longer around. After the great financial crisis, but
Good stories there, I'm sure.
no, it was great. I got into a group that actually was working on collateralized debt obligations, the CDOs, the very things that was a big part of the crisis, cause of the crisis. But just got front row seats into like a lot of the dynamics that play there of like all these mortgages, how you're packaging them, and how and then selling them to investors like they were bulletproof AAA bonds. So just learned a lot, met a lot of great friends there as well, and then but then I knew, like, while I was there, I was like, hey, this is temporary. Like, as soon as I can, I want to go and start my own thing and go back to what I really love, which is web and all those things. And during that time, mind you, I was working, 100-hour weeks sometimes. It was, investment banking hours are tough. You get, when you get off at 9 o'clock on a Friday, that's that's an early end to the day. And then, you just hope that, weekends you're not there the whole time. And so what would happen is Saywick and I developed the habit of, every Fridays, I get out at 9 from Lehman, and we'd meet at my apartment. I was living like around Times Square at the time. Saywick would come down from Columbia, and we'd just meet at my apartment, and we'd jam on making websites all Friday night till Saturday morning, just pulling all-nighters. There's, guzzling Dunkin' Donuts coffee and just like, jamming on like whatever projects we could get, like pro bono stuff for nonprofits, like stuff we're getting paid a few $100 for, whatever it was. We just love getting the reps and the creative, just the freedom of just making stuff together.
How did you find those clients in the beginning there? Like, how are you going about?
A lot of it was just word of mouth. Because remember, during my school years, like I had done freelance work, and a lot of it was for like clubs on campus. And then we had some artists that we were doing, like a friend's aunt needed something done, or like somebody that we had met at like an event that needed something done for their nonprofit. So it was just like, the answer was always yes, we could do it. Do you have budget? No. Okay, we'll still do it. It didn't matter. We just wanted to build a portfolio and just kind of have the experience. So we went hard, and by the time I quit, so I waited for the bonus to come out. Investment banking, most of your comp is in the form of an end of year bonus. So when I got that number and knew when that was going to hit my bank account, I was like, okay, let's lay the plans. And literally the day after it hit my bank account, I went in and I resigned, and also said, hey, I don't want to, like, I know I should, typically give notice, but I already like did all the transitioning prior to this, so I can just leave today and not come back. And I was clear to just leave at that point, and that was actually the start of Barrel. So at that time, so towards the end of that, Saywick and I were like, hey, I think we need to incorporate. We can have a we can do this thing where it's like design, websites, branding. Let's call it Barrel.
Can I ask a question right here?
Yep.
Why would you leave the job in investment banking, minting money? Like, people in investment banking make, I assume, like a lot of money. To start your own business risks all your, safety net in the job industry, and start our entrepreneurship, like start something new and take that risk. Where did that courage come from?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, maybe part of it was just the way I grew up, and like, just the desire to like, I've always felt like I've created my own lanes of like, being able to do what I want to do, and like, just express myself creatively in different ways. And I think, just working in finance, as enlightening and like educational as it was, there was still like, you have to like sit for, 8-10 hours a day and massage a PowerPoint to the satisfaction of someone above you. And like, it's just like, that's, there's some value to that, where you learn. I mean, I learned a ton about like being detail oriented. I don't, like I'm a stickler for like, like formatting in like Excel and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's like, is this, like what amount of money really is worthwhile for me to do something where I'm not like fully engaged in the work, like to the extent that I would be if I was doing my own thing. I think, and so I felt it was like my nature to just like, hey, uh, why don't I give this a try? And like, hey, worst case, like I could just find another job. I'm young, I was 23 at the time. So yeah, that was, kind of encouraging in the sense that like, and also like, look, the bonus was big. Like I could live off that for at least a year. So, like that was also a buffer to giving me that courage to start.
Do you feel like your experience in that industry helped? If you didn't do the investment banking component of it, would you have been as successful as you are today with where you were with Barrel? Like, was there a confidence build out of that? It's graduation time right now. When I don't know when people are watching this, but um, it does it give you? A lot of people will just jump right in without any sort of work experience, I guess, is the kind of crux of my question. Do you feel like that helped?
Yeah. I honestly don't know because I think there are some things that there's pros and cons to that experience. So I'd say, the pros were like, hey, yeah, I learned to like, I probably had no idea what being detail oriented meant until I really worked at an investment bank, and you
Mm-hmm.
really do that. Um, I think I built a ton of stamina on like, hey, like I can work like a workhorse. And also like just being in a corporate environment and seeing like how there's like clear organizations to things was helpful to see.
Mm-hmm.
But then there were also like some really kind of negative things that I learned from it that it would take years to kind of shed or like unlearn, which was like this idea of like you have to burn the midnight oil and like you have to work a lot of hours. And the first, I'd say the first several years of Barrel, like I worked like a banker. Like I worked hundreds of hours, like 100 hours plus a week sometimes, and like just did not let up because I was like, hey, this is what success is. And, like in modeling it after an investment bank, and that was no good. And then also just like this idea of like, kind of like a fear-based, like you can't mess up kind of work environment because so much of like banking is about, and at the time, maybe things have changed since, but like so much of it is like, you don't want to screw up because you're going to look bad and people are going to make sure you look bad. If you mess up, they're going to catch every mistake you make and make others know that you made that mistake. So it's like, and make a big deal of it. And it's not, you get reamed down in front of other people. You get like, just kind of called out for stuff. And it's like, that culture of fear that permeates, is was something that like I was like, oh, that's the normal way to do work. It's like
Yeah.
that carried out in negative ways when later we'd hire people and just like you kind of think that that's the normal way to manage folks, and it took some doing to unlearn that.
So as you guys, as you started Barrel, let's talk about Barrel for a little bit. You guys, based on our intro conversation, you love to hear a little bit about how you structure things, how you manage operations, because got some interesting ways of doing that. The delivery of work, how things are structured internally. Talk to us a little bit about kind of how you guys do what you do so efficiently and so well. Give us some tidbits there, how you make it work.
And you do a lot of stuff like, you seem to be
Yeah.
full service. I would love to know like, where your niche is, like who you serve, how you differentiate from us, because you are like strategy, design, development, marketing, everything. People are trying to, do one thing and then, figure out where they want to go in terms of what their specialty is. So I would love to know more about, how that all connect as well.
Yeah, and I think what we're talking about a lot is like just how are we positioned, and what are kind of our specialty areas. So the way we think about Barrel is really we're a company that helps brands scale and optimize their direct to consumer experiences. And so what I mean by that is I think especially in the past few years, like we've seen brands kind of and a lot of it's inspired by these like digitally native brands, like the Warby Parkers and the Caspers of the world that like have shown, hey, like when you go like direct to consumer through digital channels, and you can, kind of really control that experience, make it, better than maybe if they were buying it at, a retailer, a mattress shop or whatever it is, and kind of create, some favorable economics as well as like, win a loyal customer for life. So, I think so for us, we realized, okay, like this is going to be the trend slash like this is a reality. Like more and more brands, even like a brand, let's say like a sneaker brand that might have traditionally sold at Foot Locker only, or other like retailers, they're going to want to, with e-commerce, want to have a direct to consumer channel and relationship that is going to be important. So we decided to go all in on that, and really focus in. Part of it was, hey, like our Shopify work. So the e-commerce platform Shopify is where we've seen a lot of growth, and we're like, hey, let's lean into that more and do more of that, because that's where a lot of the direct to consumer action is happening. But beyond that, like we realized there's complementary services, because the same brands are going to need to go deeper into email. And so, our CRM practice has been growing because we're talking not only about email marketing campaigns, but also like, hey, SMS, how are they segmenting their list? How are they building loyalty over time? And then another component is paid marketing. We're like, hey, we need to drive traffic to the website. How are we doing that through, paid channels like Facebook and Google? And so, really it's four pillars, just the three that I talked about: web, CRM, paid, and then branding is a big part of it. And along, branding obviously is, how are we kind of thinking, how are we about the messaging, the tone, the visual identity system, as well as like the look and feel, the content that comes with everything that we need to do at different channels. So that it's really simple there. And then we do have like four verticals where the majority of our business comes from, and it's beauty, skincare, consumer packaged goods, CPG, fashion apparel, and home goods. And like, really within those, there's several brands that we work with and go deep on, and providing some or all of the services I talked about. But, really it's all with like this direct to consumer focus. We're not really, working on like with CPG on like what their retail strategy is or anything, but if they have their own e-com site, they're selling directly to clients, that we're there and we're trying to help them with that.
So that's interesting. And going back to just these questions on how you operate, because what you're saying is you have like four lines of services, four pillars, and they all work kind of independently, or how have you structured them? Because I understand some company, may come to you and they may want to do all of that, start from beginning, but some may already have part of that figured out. They may just come to you for, let's say, paid marketing. So operationally, how do you like target for different service differently to your audience, or you go for everything at one shot? Like, and how do you operate in terms of who your department heads are? Like, assume they take the ownership and then they go on and build that department. Is that how you're structured?
Yeah. So I'd say to answer that in kind of two parts. The first part is how we handle it on the business development side. And a lot of times, I mean, most of our thing, new business is kind of through inbound, and the leads that come in, as we're qualifying, we kind of understand like, there's usually something specific that folks want or need. A lot of times it does start with like, hey, we need a new website, or hey, we need to improve our e-commerce website. I'd say that's like, in many sense our bread and butter, and the way we lead with a lot of the new work. So as we kind of close those deals, part of our sales process is making it clear to the prospect that, hey, like there are these other things that we also do, and there are benefits to those things. And sometimes the clients are like, hey, that sounds great, I'll take the paid marketing and the CRM stuff as well, and let's package it together. Other times it's like, hey, we got those things covered, you guys just focus on the web. And that's fine, but that's still an entry point, because later if we do an outstanding job, and sometimes there's opportunities where it's like, hey, we're thinking about making a switch on the paid marketing side, do you guys want to be considered for that? I know you guys do it too. We throw our hat in the ring and increase the footprint there. So I'd say we lead with, and we've led with, each one of these pillars, service offering pillars, where sometimes we enter with paid marketing and end up with the website redesign. Sometimes we start with branding and we might actually end up doing the website redesign as well. So it gives us some flexibility, and we're not always about, you have to do everything with us all the time. And then on the operational side, how the team is structured. So, this, as we've kind of really solidified our service offering and like kind of done a better job of articulating it, we've had to make some changes structurally. And, some of this stuff is still in flux. I mean, to be completely honest, it's like, there's been some challenges on like, hey, like certain parts of the company operate more in silos. So as a result, we've had to make some moves to consolidate that. And so as it stands, today, the way that we decide to do it is really bucketed into like, two big areas. One is the creative marketing services group, which is headed by one of our partners, who's a chief experience officer, Lucas Valsi, and then the technology services group, which is headed by our CTO, Wes Turner. And so the two of them within it, and so that's kind of like they're overseeing a portfolio of different disciplines. And so under Lucas in the creative marketing services group, we have the creative team, which is both design and brand. And so that's like all the website design, email design, anything kind of design, creative related is under that umbrella, and with and then a brand subgroup that's kind of focused on these like brand strategy projects, customer research, things like that. And then another discipline is the CRM team. We have client services, kind of the front facing part of our client account management. And then we also have the growth marketing team, which manages our page. So that's all under Lucas. And that way we can integrate and make sure like, hey, CRM is talking to creative is talking to growth and making sure their ads are good. And there's kind of cohesion there. So we've solved that by, kind of restructuring it. And then on the technology services group side, you have project management, which kind of makes sure that the delivery of all the designs into the implementation side of things gets handled properly, and like the coordination with the different engineers are good. We have solutions engineering, which is kind of, we have solutions architects there that are overseeing kind of they're fielding like scope request stuff, they're kind of doing the research, making sure like the approach is sound, and they're recommending the right steps. And then we have a software engineering team that's kind of doing all the the hard development. We have a QA discipline as well. And then there's some like IT security stuff, especially as like privacy kind of compliance things become more important. That's all under Wes as well. So it took some doing, like, and it was like, after, kind of almost 15 years in the job, like we finally were like, hey, we there's still murkiness around where the buck stops with some of these kind of responsibilities. So let's just map it all out. And, between Sewook and myself, we've also been very clear on how we split our responsibilities. So, as CEO, like I'm obviously, steering like vision and goals and just kind of setting the tone there. But business development falls under me. So I have a director of business development who reports to me, and we're working a lot there. And then the marketing function also falls under my purview, just making sure, hey, the Barrel brand is out there. We're trying to, generating leads. And then Sewook as COO and president, he's really, overseeing the backbone, the business operations. So that's finance, HR, anything, all the legal, risk, compliance stuff, and talent, like the resourcing and the talent acquisition side of things. So he's got a full plate there, but clarity. We had clarity across the board, and like it's not like I'm kind of dipping into QuickBooks and doing stuff. We're all kind of really structured in that sense, and that's been helpful for just everyone owning what they need to own across the agency.
So there's four partners, I understand, at Barrel. Yep. And are you guys all located in New York, or you're all based across the country, right?
Yeah, last year when kind of we went work from home due to the pandemic, we made the call then and there. We're like, hey, let's go. Like we've toyed with the idea, but like let's really commit to becoming a remote team first. Mm-hmm. Not this like we'll work from home for a while and then we'll go back and maybe it's a hybrid. We're just like, no. It's a remote first model, which means we're going to hire people anywhere that can work, and team meetings and all the things that we do are going to be done with the remote first kind of structure in mind. But we've kept our offices. We have an office in New York and in LA, and the funny thing was, like, as we were thinking of ways to offload the office through like subleasing or whatever, trying to get out of our lease, more as like kind of the vaccine started getting rolled out, like the requests went from like trying to lowball us to being like, hey, we'll pay, we'll pay you whatever you guys are paying and just take the lease off your hands. And we're like, wait a second, the next thing is going to be, the price is going to go up. And so we thought, hey, we have 3 years on the lease. We just had invested a ton of money into like, expanding, taking up the whole floor and like putting in a lot of work to make it the space we want it to be. And we're just like, hey, like we can still see a future where we bring the team, together, a couple times a year, or maybe departments do it once a quarter to like, do these team building or kind of collaboration exercises, and clients still, want to come by sometimes. We have a lot of clients in the New York area as well. So we thought, hey, let's just bite the bullet. We might only have like 3 or 4 people go into the office on a regular basis, but that's okay. Like let's do it because we're gonna outgrow the cost of this anyway.
That's good. That's healthy perspective. With the 4 of you, you guys, it's having four partners run an organization. I can imagine is hard. I know you guys do something interesting to say, your quarterly, when we talked ahead of time, your quarterly conversations around, you have a unique way of staying on the same page, I guess is the question I'm trying to ask. Can you tell us a little bit about, because between you and the operation sides, plus your other 2 leaders, it's hard to kind of, especially remote, you're bi-coastal, I guess, but you've solved this in a unique way to be able to stay on the same page and keep connected. Culture is something that comes up a lot in our podcast. How do people feel like they're part of a team? How do you feel like you're communicating, especially in the agency world, and especially as all of us move to these remote kind of establishments? Can you kind of talk a little bit about this unique way that you guys have established it's working to keep you all on the same page?
Yeah. I think when it comes to culture, one of the really important things is, shared language, and just making sure, when people say a word or a term, they're saying the same things. And I think without that basis, it's really hard to be on the same page. And yeah, one way that we found a great way to develop shared language over time is to read books together. And every quarter, and this is a responsibility I just relish, I love it, is to just kind of curate a book that the partners will read. And then, the way we structure it is, we do have an all day once a quarter, the 4 of us. And so leading up to that, everyone's assigned the book, they read it, and we all take great notes. And usually you have to come prepared with like, hey, what are the 3 or 4 kind of highlights or themes that that really resonated with you? What are some kind of applicable lessons from here on the business? And then there might be some other kind of more questions specific to the book itself. So come with that, and we spend a good hour to 90 minutes at the start of our session together, our all-day session, planning session, talking about the book. So we'll put like a virtual whiteboard up, and then we'll start putting post-its of like the themes that each person wants to kind of share. And then, we can kind of group the ones that are similar. Also an opportunity to clarify. Oh, I thought it meant this. No, actually, I think, the book was talking about it this way. And so you can align in that way, just, from having done the reading, because you realize people pick up different things when they read the same book. So
what kind of books do you guys read usually? Is it business books, or are they fiction, nonfiction?
Yeah, a lot of it started with like very kind of, we say like relevant business books. So, I think there's an author, David Maister, who like wrote kind of things on like professional services firms and how they should they might operate, like managing the professional services firm, as well as like Trusted Advisor. Those are like classics that were really good. But then like over time, like it's actually went to be like, different books on culture. Actually a couple quarters ago, we read a book about it's called Playing with Movement. It's just about the body and like the physical kind of like, it was like a really cool look at like the systems thinking way of looking at the body, and like how, hey, like why is movement so important to like keeping a healthy body, the dynamics at play. And we thought it was a great metaphor for a business, because it's like, hey, like there's so many things where you're trying to treat like a symptom, but really there's an underlying root cause that's kind of leading to your pain issues or whatever. And the best way to do it, fix it, is just go for a walk. Like get your body moving instead of trying to take a painkiller or just kind of do the very targeted therapeutic way. So anyway, like we try to broaden the horizon. Another book we read was just like books about kind of like recruitment and hiring. We did one, there was one, my favorite all-time book is called The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. It's, I've written about it on my blog a lot, and that book really opened my eyes to like systems thinking in general. But just this, there's so many concepts in there that I just see every single day at play in life and in business and just any kind of just facets of life, and I think if of all the things that of all the books we've ever read, like probably reference that like at least once a week, if not more, and it's just a constant presence. But the others have been really great as well. I mean, just thinking about one of the more recent books, "An Everyone Culture," which like which talks about like deliberately developmental organizations and like what does it mean to have an organization where people feel super safe to give each other like really honest feedback, and then like where it's not about just kind of leaning into your strengths, but actually proactively identifying your weaknesses openly in front of everyone and working on it constantly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like super scary. And it's like one of those, like, oh my God, like that can't happen here. But like, it opens up our minds to like what's possible.
Have you tried it?
Yeah. I mean, within ourselves, like absolutely. Like, and part of inspired by that book, actually, we had our partner quarterly meeting last Thursday. And there's an exercise in there called the Immunity to Change map, where you come with this whole kind of like map that you draw out of like your most like important like improvement area. And you go into like the specifics of like, hey, if I'm being honest with myself, I am, like, and it's basically you identify your weakness, right? And you go like, hey, these are the things I'm doing to reinforce my weakness. This is probably the fears I have deep down on why I behave this way. And these are the assumptions I hold about, myself and the world that reinforces it. And oh my God, it's like emotionally like, in some ways gut wrenching, gut punching. Actually, it's like you sometimes when you're filling out the fears box of this map, like it's very emotional, and like it's like you have to really be vulnerable for this. And thankfully, like our partnership team is we trust each other. We want the best for each other, and that's allowed us a safe space to talk about these things. And so there were some tear shed, and just some things that we could honestly get off our chests or just kind of talk about. And yeah, that was really awesome in terms of like how that book was able to inspire that.
It's such a creative way to stay connected, especially as you made the decision to not be physically together. I think this is the first, and of all the folks that we've talked to, probably one of the most unique, and it sounds like particularly successful ways to stay connected. Have you thought about or tried expanding it to a larger team and doing like a company-wide? I've been at companies that have tried doing, a book, like everyone was required over a quarter to read a book, and then 150 person company having a discussion isn't the most effective thing on the planet. But, if it's something that you guys have explored doing, expanding it to a larger team, or are you kind of like, man, we're just going to keep this one to ourselves and we'll figure something else out?
Yeah. One thing, so different kind of like groups within our team have tried, different reading exercises together, group kind of like book clubs and things like that. I'll strategically kind of share different books with, different people to kind of make sure we can align on shared language and such.
Yeah.
So, I do that a lot with our, with our head of business development, where he and I will read a couple things together and be like, hey, look, like these are the concepts that we're talking about now, and like this, we should try XYZ things. So yeah, at the company-wide level, we might encourage books, and like we might share things, like I think last year, especially just kind of around their discussions around social justice and BLM. Like we did send everyone a copy of Just Mercy and just kind of had some space for folks to kind of talk about those things. So like there might be opportunities like that, but yeah, really like the thing with books is like you need that kind of like hardcore commitment from a small group to like dive into it and read it with the rigor because all it takes is one person just kind of half-ass reading it to like spoil the discussion or just kind of be disengaged. So I think in many ways like we've kept it small on purpose because that's how you get maximum impact.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about successes and growth and how you've gotten to be where you are. I'd love to talk and spend a few minutes discussing some of the challenges in getting to where you are, as an agency owner. And maybe I love this question. It's so awkward to ask though. What was the biggest mistake that you feel like you've made so far in what you've done? Is that something you would be willing to share and talk about?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's, I don't really think about, kind of isolated mistakes or incidents or things like that as like, as what's holding back because and once again it's kind of like the systems thinking thing. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's like it's almost like a veil being lifted where once you kind of see that you're just like okay, like there were some underlying dynamics at play that led to certain things not working the way that we thought could work. And so if I was to kind of pinpoint certain things though, I'd say look like the number one thing that probably held us back was just probably like just me as a person, like just not being mature or just like, kind of taking a while to kind of get to a place where, I was fully kind of committed, dedicated, and, had the right mindset, had the right attitude, had the right kind of, kind of outlook on things. Cause I think, there were years where it's like, the mindset was a lot of like, oh, why is this happening to me? Or, oh, like, why is so and so not doing what they should be? Or, oh, like, that's impossible. I can't figure that out myself, so forget it. Or just like a lot of things. Or, oh, I don't want to deal with that confrontation. Or, oh, I'm just too tired to do this. Like it's like so many things that are just like piled on excuses, and just it's that mindset shift. And really just through just kind of personally committing myself to like learning, reading, just like I do try to make a commitment to like, be as, get through as many books and just kind of like expose myself to new things every year. And then also just building like a better, like, life habits, just like sleep, exercise, and like just diet, like have become like top of mind. I'm like, hey, without those things in place, like, I can't be my best self at work and I can't focus and like do the hard things. So like, I actually got to prioritize all of that first. Like, I got to make time for exercise and, just get my sleep in. Otherwise, all that stuff that I need to do, won't get done at the level I need to. So, it's just figuring those and getting those pieces in place. I say if there was a mistake, it's probably just like not having figured that out sooner. And like that, it happens so late. But it's always like better late than never, and I've reaped a lot of upside since I kind of committed myself that way. And so yeah, and at the end of the day, that's part of leadership. The biggest part of it is like just modeling. If you model, if you take care of, like, if you do the things that you think are important and live the values that you say are important, like the rest of it starts to take care of itself versus just going around and trying to talk about it.
Can I go back to that discussion on how COVID has impacted how you have decided to go remote first? When you go remote, I'm assuming you're going everywhere. You mentioned that you would find talent wherever they can work and whoever, as long as they are good fit. How are you thinking that trend is changing for your company? I know remote first, but then does that open the doors for you to go out in other countries to find talent? Because many agencies like you that we have spoken to before COVID, they're all mostly in-house at the office, work together from one location. COVID has changed that mindset. They have started going out now to other countries, nearshoring, offshoring, contracting. They are working on all the models. So for you, for Beryl, has that model changed at all? Or you are still figuring that out? What are your thoughts and, planning around that?
Yeah, I'd say even prior to COVID, part of why we were kind of entertaining remote first was, especially on the technology side of things, where we're working with our different developers. We were working more with folks outside the country. So we had folks in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, like just and some were contractors, some were kind of offshore resources, and we were starting to leverage them more and more, and like saw a lot of benefit from that too. It was just like, hey, this is great, but there's challenges as well, time zone, and like you have to kind of adopt some new ways of working. But we're like, this is the future anyway. Like there's going to be certain there's talent and just kind of like the cost advantages and a lot of different ways to scale are going to be super important. So we really have to embrace that. So I'd say right now, like, yeah, there's I think when it comes to like client facing and like there's and project management or even design, where there's a lot of like kind of you need those kind of hours that overlap for meetings. That's probably the main limitation of like hiring within certain time zones. But that's to say, like, we have ambitions to be have more clients globally. We do have clients that are from outside the country, but like let's say we do have, if we get more clients in Asia or in Australia or wherever, it's like, yeah, you'd want some client facing folks based out there. And so, like if that happens, cool. Like we'll roll with it. We're not shutting the door on that. And in fact, we welcome it. It'd be pretty interesting. But yeah, like we're fully committed to like remote first, and with the potential for it to go super international and get global.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is there are two parts of your operations that you're thinking. One, from the delivery standpoint, which you have been already doing even pre-COVID, that you have been going out, you have been working with people around the globe from execution perspective, but from growth perspective as well, you are thinking of expanding and going in different countries to acquire more clients and having client facing people. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, a part of it is going to be that, but then I think other things are like, hey, if our clients, existing clients, as they kind of scale and like go have more needs internationally as well, like can we be there to support that? So yeah, it's a bit of both, like from the acquisition side, but also just supporting existing clients as they scale up.
Yeah, and the time zone difference that you mentioned, I think that's definitely a bigger challenge. But I think as more and more people are getting more accustomed to the idea of remote, I think even clients are getting more accustomed to the idea of people are working in different time zones, so they kind of accept the fact that some people will be working in different hours. So makes sense.
Yep.
As you're thinking about the future, as you're expanding, tell us a little bit about what some of your goals are. Where do you see Barrel headed in the near future? You said global was an option. What else you got cooking?
Yeah. This has been top of mind because we are celebrating our like 15 years in a few weeks. And
congrats.
Thank you. And we have a lot of kind of things kind of planned to share. We've been sharing some things with the team, and I think we really kind of laying out like a 5-year plan that we're really eager to. We're already starting towards it, and part of it is obviously we want to grow, and we have some like revenue targets, we have some like kind of profitability targets, and we also want to make sure, like I think the kind of vision is like, hey, like we're committed to like this direct to consumer experience, just kind of helping brands really be the best they can be with the direct to consumer experience. How can we become kind of recognized and just really live as like global leaders and especially that, just be known for that, and we have a lot of different kind of ideas on how we think we can get there, but but I think really what's in store is addressing first and foremost like the things that are kind of holding us back. And it starts off first and foremost, I think, with like on the business development side. And I think the things that have traditionally kind of made it difficult, as an agency business is like saying yes to the wrong things. Just like in the moment. You can rationalize almost anything. You go, oh yeah, like that sounds like we can just make a quick buck or two. Yeah, we'll get it done in a couple months. Like just you might rationalize these things, and you go, okay, it might not be as strict with your qualification, but then over time, these things can compound and just kind of send you off the wrong path. So we've become very committed to just sticking with our just our business qualification process of like, hey, let's score every single lead that comes in, make sure they kind of hit a certain threshold, and then let's make sure the conditions in which we can do this project are such that our team can deliver our best work. It took a long time to get there because, like I said, if you're running, especially a small business, you're always thinking about, hey, like, is there enough money coming in? There's a pipeline full, all those things, and you kind of make compromises. But I think we're in a position, especially having built out like some really great kind of recurring retainer revenue clients and just having some base there and if we can really crack kind of some of the side of the marketing side of things, as well as like kind of maybe some outbound like the business development campaigns, I think that's gonna put us in a position to be even more picky about the work that we choose and kind of control our destiny that way. So that's top of mind. If we can do that, I think we're gonna kind of really get to hit our goals and grow. And then the other parts are just like, how do we go provide even deeper expertise and depth in the services that we have? Like, for example, CRM is something that we think there's incredible amount of potential, especially, if you're going direct to consumer, you want to own the relationships, you want to own all the data on your customers and, not have to rely on the Facebooks and Googles of the world for that. And so how can we go, not just beyond sending emails, but, really kind of owning like, the data, content data platforms, the customer data platforms, as well as like the, getting sophisticated on the automations and segmentations. So very excited about what we can do with that. And then just the last bit is like, yeah, like the structure of the company. And like one thing that we're really keen on is like, hey, how do we build the infrastructure to consistently produce great leaders, for tomorrow for our team? Because, we've been fortunate, the two partners that we have, Wes and Lucas, they came up through the ranks. Like they were hired as just, a designer, a dev. And, we were so lucky. They were just, so great at just, taking on more responsibilities and organically kind of became these amazing leaders. So instead of leaving it to chance and luck, how can we have a well-structured management training program where, the designer, the junior designer of today, maybe they have some amazing interpersonal skills and they have a desire to really kind of become a great manager, kind of giving them the path to do that within our company. And look, it doesn't matter if they end up staying or not, because obviously we'd love for them to stay and, contribute, but really this is going to be good for the Barrel brand as well, because these folks, they might go on to work at like a startup or a tech company and just have great impact there. And part of that will be because we played a part in the development. So I think those are the things that we're really excited and keen on to develop in the coming years.
How are you approaching growth? I mean, you have mentioned about the challenges and things that, keep you up at night, but how big are you right now?
Yeah. I mean, big as in what? Because like, we can talk about headcount and revenue.
Employee size.
Yeah. So yeah, we're, I say like 30, was it like 35 to 37 full time right now? But
right.
Like, I always find that like such a, kind of silly way to look at size, because you can have, hundreds of people at a much lower cost basis if you're structured differently with resources different places. You can have very few people with super high costs, like the gray hairs or whatever, and then that's a different and a different kind of structure as well. Or you could have a completely kind of like 1099 model, where you have no full time and still do the work of a 500-person agency. So I'm like I like to talk more like rev numbers and stuff, and so like Yeah, we're sub 10 mil, and like, but I think we'll get there sooner than later. And so that's it. I think that's more proxy for size, to be honest, like in terms of stage of the company.
Yes, sure. That makes sense. I guess I was the question I was trying to understand was, where do you see yourself going? How large do you want to become? It took you 15 years to get here, right? Mm-hmm. So when to our listeners, like when they think about growth, they are mostly smaller agencies, 1, 2, 3, 5 million, and they are thinking about going big, growing their agency. How do you approach, like, what would you advise them when they think about growth for themselves, like what to look for? I mean, one is, of course, what do they want personally, but from agencies business, right? From business perspectives, what should they be looking for? How, what challenges may come across? How do you solve them? What to look for?
Yeah, when it comes to growth, I don't, I'd be lying to say if I knew the answer, just because like it's taken us this long to get to where we are, and I just feel like, hey, like this took a long time, and I just feel like, it could have happened a lot faster. So I think from where I sit today, right, and I think where, when I think about growth, it really there's growth that's sustainable and meaningful, and then there's this growth that like just shows up on the rev numbers, but then it's kind of deceiving. So what I mean by that is like, and this is I've kind of written about in the past, where there's like kind of like healthy, or just kind of like good revenue versus bad revenue. I think so I think if you have, and by good revenue, what I mean is like it's the type of you've landed engagements and you've kind of done work that like sets you up to get that work at a lower cost next and do it at a higher margin next, and also to build your portfolio in a way that's like easier to land business next. So if you execute in that and have the discipline to do it there, and then avoid bad revenue, which might be, hey, it's a quick buck right now, you might even make good margins, but there's a short-term aspect to it. It doesn't kind of accrue value over time, and it's like a one and done thing. Maybe it's like that portfolio piece doesn't fit in with the rest of the stuff, so it looks like a one-off, and you don't look like an expert for having done it. If you do too many of those, which we certainly have, it's going to slow down your growth over a longer period of time. So I think it's more, if there is any advice at all that I can dispense on this, would be like, hey, like taking a long-term perspective on growth, as in, just what are the hard decisions and the things that you have to do now, so that if you're looking back in 2 to 3 years, those were the decisions that kind of built things up and kind of almost had a compounding effect, versus the stuff that might have given you good numbers for that year, but ultimately it was like you didn't land that one-off thing the next year, and you just had nothing to show for. So I'd say maybe that's kind of my takeaway there.
That's a great insight. I love that. I mean, the way to think about growth, don't look at the bigger numbers, but think about how you can be more efficient, more profitability, choosing the right projects, and just guide you through the right channel. So that's great. And
how it fits your niche, and how it serves your target niche as well. Well, this was an insightful conversation today, Peter. Thank you so much for joining us and answering all of our multitude of questions and providing some insight. So for folks listening, where you can find Peter is on LinkedIn, Twitter, barrelny.com, as we discussed earlier, unfortunately. And then your personal website for, we didn't talk about that at all, but you're a pretty prolific blogger on there, peterkang.com. So thanks so much. It was a pleasure. And that's it, everybody. If you learned something today or laughed, tell someone about the podcast. Until next time, thanks.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. Find our other episodes on agenciesthatbuild.com. Plus, we're listed anywhere you find your favorite podcast.